All right, welcome, exhausted parents, to today's explainer. Look, if you have ever found yourself pacing the floor in the dark, just desperately trying to figure out why your newborn is crying at 8 p.m., you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to crack the code on baby sleep. We've pulled together some truly fascinating insights from pediatric sleep specialists and neonatal research to help you decode exactly what your little one is trying to tell you, and honestly, more importantly, how to help both of you finally get some rest.
Okay, before we get into the weeds, let's just take a collective breath of relief. If your newborn's behavior feels totally erratic and unpredictable right now, please hear this. It is not a failure on your part. You aren't creating, bad habits. You're really just witnessing a completely normal biological phase. Your baby is adjusting to the outside world, and their tiny nervous system is basically still under construction.
So, here is our roadmap out of the exhaustion. We'll be covering newborn chaos, reading body language, untangling whether it's sleep or hunger, the danger of overtiredness, white noise science, and finally, creating a gentle routine. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. Newborn chaos, and why those evenings are just so incredibly tough. Those first few weeks are just wild, right? But the sources highlight a crucial point that we so often forget. Newborns have absolutely zero internal rhythm. No biological clock whatsoever. They literally do not know the difference between day and night yet. The maternal melatonin that helped them sleep initially, which they actually got from mom during birth, starts to wear off. That leaves a baby who has to slowly learn how to self-regulate. And get this, 16. Well, it feels like you never ever get a moment to sit down. A 1-week-old baby actually needs 16 to 17 hours of sleep a day. But here's the catch. It happens in very short, chaotic cycles. A newborn sleep cycle is only about 45 minutes long. They start with light sleep and only hit deep sleep at the very tail end. So they need a massive amount of rest, but they take it in these tiny, easily interrupted little fragments.
And that sensory buildup, that is exactly why the evenings are so notoriously brutal. The infamous witching hour isn't magic, it's really just sensory overload. I mean, think about it. Everyday stimuli, the lights, the ambient sounds of your house, just being held and touched, all of that builds up all day long. So by the time evening rolls around, this accumulation leaves your baby entirely overwhelmed. Their little nervous system just maxes out.
Moving on to part 2, reading body language. Because believe it or not, your baby really is speaking to you. We just got to learn how to read their micro movements so we can step in before that sensory overload hits its peak. Let's look at the absolute first subtle signs of fatigue. Catching these early cues is literally the secret to avoiding a full-blown meltdown. You might notice them staring off with a glassy gaze, or maybe they flash this little dreamy smile. Sometimes they'll even try to block out the world entirely by hiding their face in your chest. Red cheeks, pulling at their ears, rubbing their eyes, these are all classic early indicators. The second you see these, it is time to start winding down. So observation is key, right? But where exactly should you be looking? Well, try asking yourself, what are my baby's hands telling me? It turns out a baby's hands act as a direct, physical window right into their nervous system. This translation matrix here is like a cheat code. A tight fist with a thumb tucked inside, that shows tension, effort, or even anger. But an open hand with loose fingers, that means they're relaxed and ready for sleep. If it's half open with just the thumb and index finger out, they're curious. And if their fingers are suddenly stretched and spread wide out, they're startled or overwhelmed, which ties back to the moral reflex. Literally, just by looking at the tension in their tiny hands, you can gauge exactly how they're feeling.
All right, part 3, sleep or hunger. Let's untangle these signals.
Untangling this is basically a daily puzzle for parents. Is it time for a bottle or is it time for bed? Let's compare the two states. Hunger cues typically look like smacking lips, sticking their tongue out, rooting around with their nose, and sucking on their hands. Sleep cues, on the other hand, look more like avoiding eye contact, yawning, jerky movements, and those red cheeks we talked about. Now here is where it gets super tricky. An overtired baby might still suck on their hands just out of pure fatigue to soothe themselves. And that's exactly why you can't just look at one single action. Observing their full body is absolutely crucial. But whatever you do, please remember this golden rule. Crying is an alarm, it is not an early signal. Crying is actually a late sign of both hunger and sleepiness. By the time a newborn is fully crying, they are already highly stressed and they're burning the precious energy they actually need to eat or sleep. The whole goal of reading body language is to catch the need way before that alarm ever goes off. Which brings us to part 4, the danger of overtiredness, and why awake time matters so much.
Overtiredness is basically the main culprit behind a baby who just flat out refuses to settle down. There's this dangerous little pivot that happens. A well-rested baby who is just starting to get tired will yawn. They'll have that dreamy gaze. They get easily distracted. But an overtired baby, they might actually turn a bit pale, their eyes go wide open, and they become incredibly hyperactive with frantic movements. Sometimes, we try stretching a baby's wake time thinking, hey, maybe they'll sleep longer at night. The science shows this backfires completely. You just end up with a wired, exhausted infant whose body is now pumping stress hormones, making sleep almost impossible.
To prevent that trap, you need to follow biological wake windows based on their age. Feel free to screenshot this if you need to. A newborn up to 2 weeks old can really only handle about 30 to 45 minutes of awake time before they need to sleep again. By 3 to 5 months, that only stretches to maybe an hour and a half. Following this biological rulebook keeps your baby from hitting that critical overtired threshold.
Okay, part 5, the science of white noise and how to soothe safely.
So, how do we actively calm them down when things get tough? Well, the idea here is to mimic the constant rustling sounds of the womb. It can effectively short-circuit a crying spell. But there is a very specific rule for this: 50. Recent studies show that 50 decibels is the absolute maximum safe volume for white noise. To put that into perspective, 50 decibels is roughly the volume of a gentle, humming refrigerator.
Let's break that down into 3 really strict safety steps. First, keep the device at least 30 centimeters away from the baby's bed. Second, cap that volume at a safe 50 decibels. And third, turn the machine off once the baby is actually fully asleep. Putting these devices too close to the crib or blasting them too loudly can actually cause your baby more stress or, worse, risk hearing damage. Finally, part 6, creating a gentle routine to bring back the calm. So how do we actually architect a calm evening environment that supports a newborn's rapidly developing brain? Well, here are your evening routine essentials. The whole goal is to physically mirror the calm you want the baby to feel. Dim the lights immediately after sunset to signal that night is coming. Drastically reduce your ambient household noise. Turn down the TV, shut doors softly. When you speak, use a calm, low-pitched voice, and actually, here's a great tip, narrate your actions. Softly saying, "I'm washing your arms now," makes their world predictable and helps prevent that startle reflex. But most importantly, in these early weeks, just ditch the strict schedules entirely. Follow their biological cues instead. I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought to chew on. Your baby is getting to know a new world. But are you getting to know your baby's world? By learning their micro-cues, respecting those wake windows, and adjusting the sensory volume of your home, you're really stepping directly into their shoes. Trust the decoding process. Be patient with the chaos, and I promise you, rest is entirely within reach. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I genuinely wish you all a very peaceful night's sleep.